Hello and very warm welcome to a brand new edition of The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Television. Well, Brazil is experiencing its worst political stalemate since the transition to democracy in 1985. The lower house of Congress on Sunday voted to impeach President Dilma Rousseff of the Workers' Party. Now the Senate is likely to take up the impeachment, forcing Dilma to step aside for up to 180 days or 6 months, while the Vice President, Michel Temer, assumes the presidency. If Dilma is impeached by the Senate, this will be the first time this has happened in Brazilian history. It could mean the end of the 14 years of PT control of the presidency. But is it just the beginning of what's likely to be bigger drama shaping Brazil's future? That's what we're going to try and find out on this edition of The Big Picture. Joining me on the program today are Ranjit, Kumar, diplomatic editor, Navbharat Times; Rajiv, Dogra, former diplomat; Abdul, Nafey, professor, Center for Canadian, US and Latin American Studies, JNU; and Ruchita, Beri, senior research associate, Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for being with us on the program. Let's try and put things into perspective. Now, I'd like to start with you, of course, Ruchita, and ask you, impeachment has been voted to by the lower house, and the lower house has said that, yes, Dilma Rousseff should be impeached and the process should begin. The fact that remains that, it's not just the two-thirds majority that voted against her, but it was much above that. So that dealt a big blow to Dilma Rousseff, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Actually, in the recent months, her popularity has gone down considerably.
Considerably, yes.
It's almost gone to single digit, below 10%. So she was definitely, her popularity was going down, and she has also been facing a lot of other problems, because this has come in the backdrop of the fact that the economy is not doing really well. The inflation is in double digits. The country is going to host Olympics in August, and under her leadership, the Workers' Party faced this major corruption scandal where the oil company Petrobras was involved in bribery and kickbacks related issues. So she has been having a tough time for the last few months, and this impeachment has come at a time when her morals are really down, but she's standing strong and saying that she's going to fight it out, because there has been no charges leveled against her personally.
Yes.
There's no corruption charge leveled against her personally.
The problem really, Professor, is that corruption runs deep. Now, the person who's later to take over from her, be it just for 180 days till the process itself is completed, he too has corruption allegations against him. And if there's someone who follows him, then even that person, the Speaker of the lower house, has corruption allegations against him. So, where do you go from here?
My take on this subject is, for another 6 months, this drama will continue to go. Nothing is straight in Brazilian politics. Politicians do lots of backroom dealing and counter dealing. Brazil is famous or infamous for this kind of politics. At the center of it all is a very major party called Brazilian Democratic Party. The Vice President, Speaker of the lower house, Senate President, they all three belong to the same party.
Yes.
For 30 years, they have been the kingmakers. They have decided to be the king themselves. And therefore, the ambition of the Vice President is behind it. PMDB is like a viper's nest, to be very honest. There are deep factions within. Vice President and Speaker of the lower house don't see eye to eye. Senate President would like to push the two rivals from the scene, and why not fulfill his own ambitions? My take on the subject is, this impeachment will start in the Senate, prolong as many as 180 days. By then, Brazilian politicians would arrive at some backroom dealings. Dilma will be there restored as president, and will complete her term as the lame duck president.
That's a very interesting take. So you're saying that it's not going to be history that is going to be created in Brazil?
No. They are very intelligent politicians, let me tell you.
Okay.
And there are very powerful vested interests, very powerful stakeholders in Brazil.
Okay. Ambassador Dogra, a similar situation prevailed in 1992, but the then president of Brazil was forced to, forced to resign and forced to step down. Do you see a similar kind of situation playing itself out this time around, where Dilma Rousseff will be forced to step down by her party?
Well, let's put things in perspective. I remember I had led the Indian delegation in 2005 to the first IPSA meeting, India, Brazil, South Africa meeting of secretaries. So when I was at that meeting and talking to my counterparts from Brazil and South Africa, I found there was a huge amount of excitement, not only in the bureaucratic establishment, but in general economy and amongst the politicians, because Dilma's predecessor, Lula, was supposed to be one of the tallest leaders in the developing world. And Brazilian economy was doing very well, based as it was largely on natural resources. And we all thought that the three countries cannot falter. IPSA later became BRICS, and BRICS again for a short while, it was assumed, was going to lead the world in a new economic chapter. Now, all that is history, and Brazil's political and economic downfall started from 2008 or 10 onwards, and then things started falling apart. Dilma's misfortune is not that she's corrupt. Her misfortune is that she only window dressed the economy before 2014 elections to make it look better than it actually was. And then the politicians got into the act. So before 2014 elections, there was a strike because of the rise in the bus fares. And since then, Dilma, who had 90% approval rating at one time, has fallen to, as someone said, about single digit, 10% or 9% presently. Does she have an escape? I doubt it very much. I mean, other speakers, one of them has said that probably she has, and I hope so, but I have my doubts for the simple reason, who are the members voting for impeachment? Look at what happened in the lower house. More than 2/3 voted for her impeachment, and over 150 of those have major corruption charges against them. And the Speaker of the lower house, if he is found to be guilty of the corruption charges against him, he will be in jail for the next 180 years. So, with a political dice loaded against her, I see very little chance of her survival in the Senate, where 49 out of 81 members again have corruption charges against them. So, Brazil is like Alice in Wonderland, where things are not what this appeared to be. Just like Brazil's Women's Party has no women member in the legislature. They are all male members. So similarly, in politics, as in everyday life, Brazil's appearance of happiness conceals a lot of sadness. And in this case, a country which is going up and up is sending out a lesson that don't have your hopes too high. And perhaps that's a lesson for other BRICS countries also, because they are also facing some kind of a turmoil, corruption related or otherwise, around the same time.
Indeed. Ranjit Kumar, Dilma Rousseff has said that it's a coup against her and she's going to fight till the end. Now, what are her options really, and can she really fight it out? Because like the ambassador has pointed out, all those who are against her are going to vote against her in the Senate as well, and then she's eventually going to face tremendous problems.
Yeah, it has rightly been described as a democratic coup against the president. It's very unfortunate development. Brazil has seen an era of military dictatorships, and now a democratic government, efforts to destabilize this government is very unfortunate in view of the fact that next August, Brazil will be hosting the Olympic Games. And during that time, Brazil needs a strong national leadership. In the absence of that, it will cast a doubt on the effective organization of the Olympic Games.
So do you think that what is happening politically in Brazil is going to have its bearing on the Olympics as well, and we can see that?
Yeah, there will be international concern relating to that, because there are international participation in that games, and it's a matter of national pride for the Brazilians. And they must be concerned about that.
Indeed. Ruchita, the fact that you pointed out and you brought up as well, it's not just the political turmoil that exists in Brazil, but all this has stemmed from because of the economic crisis really in Brazil, and that's what's prompted all of this. And it's not the end, is it? Because the troubled times are only going to increase now.
Yeah, I think the problems are going to increase. The political uncertainty is going to lead into the economic sector too. Brazil was one of the is the ninth largest economy in the world.
Yes.
But it is facing hard times. This, as was rightly pointed out earlier, this is going to set an example for the other emerging powers as to how to deal with their economies. And with the inflation, at double digits, and their currency devaluing, I think the Brazilian government, whichever, whether it's Dilma or Mr. Whoever the vice president, will have a tough time in future to deal with it. In fact, the industry, the business is in favor of Dilma leaving. They are in favor of Dilma leaving because they feel that her policies were not favoring them, and Mr. Temer is supposed to be pro-business.
Indeed.
So I think there is a tough battle ahead for Brazil as a whole.
There is a tough battle ahead for Brazil on the whole, but let's focus now a little bit on Dilma Rousseff. Professor, she has said that she's going to fight till the end, but what are her options now? What can Dilma Rousseff really do?
2-3 things. Sitting in India, we generally don't realize, Brazil is a country of civil society. Mind you, it is a country which hosted the largest number of the World Social Forum meetings. Remember it?
Yes.
In fact, political society and civil society, it stands on its own. Workers' Party in the last 30-40 years has been able to gain widespread support from civil society organizations. I am sure this civil society will not let this elite politics, the politicians, the way the game they are playing among themselves, let it go like this. Dilma said, yes, they are going to get back to the street. What I am anticipating is a temporary period in which focus shifts from Dilma. Workers' Party is going to reorganize its relationship with the civil society, and they are going to launch very massive demonstrations, protests, so that democracy is not really sabotaged.
So that's their first and primary objective, and that's what they're going to do, is what you're saying. Yes, okay.
Only 2 months back, a congressional committee had cleared her of all the charges. And what is the charge? That she violated the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Brazil is a very strange country. They write everything into the constitution and into the law. Every president is supposed to produce budget surpluses, and only then Congress will look into it. No, it is not possible all the time that you have budget surpluses. So many times national budgets have deficits also, and whole year you continue with the deficit. A Brazilian constitution also stipulates what would be the income tax rates. Everything they have written in the constitution. As a result, any change that you have to bring about, you have to make the constitution amend. That means you start the politics among the politicians. Everybody forgets income tax. They start debating, mujhko kya mila, usko kya mila. Everybody forgets fiscal responsibility. Therefore, everybody was indulging into it. My take on this is there are rigidities within the constitutional and institutional structure of the country. Dilma is going to take resort to the civil society mobilization and support. The mayor, as of today, if he contests the election, he will get only 1, maybe 2% of the votes. This is the latest indication and survey coming from Brazil. So these are not very popular leaders in the opposition.
Yes, they are not popular leaders, but they want to be the kings, like as you said. They've been kingmakers for about 30 years. They want to be the king, of course. Ambassador Dogra, Several media reports in Brazil have suggested that Lula da Silva, one of the tallest leaders of Brazil and one of the most popular leaders of Brazil, would contest the 2018 elections again. So, did that, of course, have some kind of bearing on some of the politicians in Brazil to go against Dilma Rousseff and try and get the Workers' Party out of power and then do something?
No, I don't think there is a direct correlation between that and what is happening now. But before I come to these issues, since there's been a talk about what will happen to the Olympics and so on, this is not the first time that Olympics are going to be staged in a country which is passing through some turbulence. And this will not be the first time that Brazil has beaten all speculations against it and organized a successful game. The recent World Cup football was an example. The stadiums were not even ready till a week or two before the event, but they went off beautifully. So in the end, the national spirit amongst Brazilians, which is very high, would ensure that the Olympics are held in the manner they should be held. And in any case, one should hope that they are held in an efficient manner. But coming back to the politics of all this, I think it is not pure politics that is going to determine what is going to happen in Brazil 2 months, 6 months, or 1 year from now. The fundamental issue is whether the economy is going to improve. And I have my doubt on an economy which is largely dependent on natural resources for its export income, be it oil or minerals and so on. Oil prices are not going to go up in the near future according to all speculation. So if the economy does not have a way of looking up, and if people who are going to replace her are going to be corruption tainted and extremely self-centered, Vice President, for example, Vice President Temer was seen in a videotape which got mass circulation recently, preparing his speech for acceptance speech as the president. So people are already disillusioned. But where do they go? Do they go back to Dilma in the next 6 months, or Lula, as you said, in the next election? Well, it's not as easy as it sounds, because once a person is in power, then the equation changes. Then the new power centers emerge and the new ways of giving bread and circus to the people emerge. So the central point is going to be not so much the political ability of those in power, but whether they can maneuver and window dress economy in such a way that at least it acts as a palliative.
Indeed, I mean, that's a very valid point you're making, because at the end of the day, economy drives everything else. Ranjit Kumar, as far as the politicians of the near future also are concerned, if someone wants to do well in Brazil, they have to somehow find a way to revive the economy, and only then can they survive politically.
You're right. Brazil is facing the worst era of recession since after the 1930s decades. So, that made it a little bit unpopular. See, a lot of high taxes were imposed on the middle class people, amongst the middle class people also, so that made her unpopular. And she also tried to convince people. She won the elections on the plank of removing poverty, like Garibi Hatao kind of thing she was doing in Brazil also, but she could not succeed. And then she had to manage the economy by fiscal irresponsibility also. She tried to manipulate the budget also, so that gave an excuse for the opposition leaders to move this impeachment motion against her.
Indeed. As far as Brazil itself is concerned and Dilma Rousseff is concerned, Ruchita, the fact that her popularity has come down to single digits, like you said, inflation too is at an all-time high, almost at 11% at the moment. So, what has really caused this for Dilma? Why has her popularity diminished, in a matter of a couple of years?
I think there are various reasons given in, and one of the factors has been the kind of policies she has adopted, which has led to the problems that have happened. It's not, I think, her personal policies, but so much as to the kind of problems she had to deal with. Because I believe there was recently a dam disaster, and also the fact that if you look, we were talking about the oil factors as a problem, that the oil prices have been going down, and that's been causing the economic crisis. I think Brazilian economy has to a large extent been dependent on the commodities, and the commodity boom had been a factor in the heights that the Brazilian economy reached. But in the recent years, the slide in the crude oil prices has led to a fall in the economic situation in the country. And moreover, I think so far as Dilma Rousseff is concerned, I was talking earlier about the private sector. The businesses feel that with the disposing of Dilma, there might be a chance of the oil sector opening up to the private companies. So they are waiting for that to happen, and they feel that that the vice president might deliver. So I feel that there are chances that Dilma may not be able to get the kind of support she is hoping for, and I think we may see a change in leadership.
A change in regime sometime soon is what you're saying. But let's go back a few years, Professor, and talk about Lula da Silva. Why he was so popular and why his popularity, soared through the roof was the fact that he managed to bring in those jobs. He managed to, increase the minimum wages, and it's the support really of the poor that he got that made him such a great leader, as many Brazilians put it. So, I mean, if that changes, if someone manages to, improve the situation in Brazil, get in those jobs really so that the spending power of the people increases, I think that can cure a lot of ills for Brazil.
You are right. Lula is a politician of a different kind. He is a grassroots person. He is a factory worker. He was the president of the Electricians Union of Brazil. He lost one of his finger while on the factory floor. He emerged from that. Charismatic. He formed the Workers' Party in 1980 at a time when established parties used to discredit it. And along with the civil society organizations, really then made his party very large and effective. It was very fortunate for him that when he became the president in 2003, that precisely is the time when export boom had started in Brazil. Soy and soybean, secondly iron ore, and finally 2007 Brazil is discovering huge hydrocarbon resources in offshore. That gave a real boost to Brazilian exports and also invited massive foreign investments into precisely these three sectors. Therefore, being a leader of the Workers' Party, he was also able to increase social spending, Bolsa de Familia, cash transfer to the poor. Your child goes to the school and some money comes into your account. Those kind of things he was able to do. Very good ones. In fact, India learned a lot from the Bolsa Familia. Our Nirega and others, we drew a lot from their experiences. Dilma is a politician of a different kind. She is a former guerrilla.
Yes.
She is not very popular.
Yes.
She is very bureaucratic. She comes from an extremely wealthy aristocratic family of immigrants from one of the Eastern European countries. She is a no-nonsense person. Actually, she had a contempt for ordinary politicians who were members of the Congress. Now all those things are coming back to haunt her.
Indeed.
That explains her declining popularity. Unfortunate for her, Brazilian exports started going down as China slowed down. Economic crisis was not really that serious, but politicians have made it that serious.
Okay.
Mind you, Brazil is the 5th largest economy in the world. It's not the 6th, it is the 5th largest. Brazil is a highly industrialized economy. It's a country where 60% of the population is urban middle class. Don't quote Brazilian exports to China, which are primary products. Major Brazilian exports are within the region.
Indeed.
And it consists of manufacturers, semi-manufacturers, even capital goods, Brazil able to export. Brazil does very well with Europe in terms of exporting manufactured goods. So Brazil is not one of those economies like a Peru or a Bolivia or a
Yes.
Chile. It's a country with lots, it's a 200-pound gorilla, let me tell you, in the global economy. So let's not really write off Brazil. Dilma's only problem is she was flip-flopping in the last 2 years.
Okay.
Keep her promise and program and maintain high social spending, or introduce some belt tightening measures, austerity program. She shifted her finance minister, then shifted the policy, again brought somebody else, again, those kind of things have created major economic crisis. All those who are opposing to her, they were party to these decisions. After all, they were vice president and speaker and members of this and that committee. All of them, those who are critical of her policies today, were until yesterday they were part of those very
Yes.
policies. My feeling on this is that Brazil has lots of internal economic and technological strength. I mean, Petrobras, Embraer, Brazilian oil mining companies, some of them are really extremely good, globally competitive companies. If Brazil sets its own house in order in political terms, economy, and adopts right kind of economic measures, my feeling in the next 6 months to 8 months, the economy should really begin showing.
All right. Okay,
Strength.
interesting what you said there, Professor, and let's hope that really happens for Brazil, and let's hope that Brazil comes out of this hole that it has dug itself into.
Exactly.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, because we're completely out of time at this point in time. So we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Ranjit, Kumar, Rajiv, Dogra, Abdul, Nafey and Ruchita, Beri, thank you so much for being with me on The Big Picture today and sharing your views on this very subject. That's all the time we have on this edition. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.